If you're anything like me, you've probably read dozens of life-changing books, but still forgotten most of them. But there are a few books that I still think about nearly every single week, and I'm constantly recommending to other people because they actually tangibly change the way that I work. And if you are somebody who is trying to grow in your career, then some of the answers that you're looking for may be in these books. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you those exact books that helped me get promoted, helped me recover from burnout, helped me figure out what I wanted to do next in my career, and the best times to read them so that you can skip the fluff, steal all the highlights, and start making progress so much faster. Let's jump in. So let's start in the sunken place. If you are at a place where you just really hate your job, you are overwhelmed, you are burnt out, and you're just having a really hard time, and you just feel like you're dreading Mondays, you're just struggling, just work sucks. And maybe you have got to the point where you just feel like this is not sustainable. It's just so hard to see beyond the toxicity and confines of what it is that you're doing, then the book that I'm going to recommend for you is Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. And that might sound surprising, but the reason why is that so many people, when they come to me for career coaching, the thing that comes up so commonly is that people just feel too overworked and too burnt out and too tired to even have the headspace to think about what it is that they might want to do instead. And so the ideas that are in this book, which are all about how productivity in our current modern knowledge work setup is so distorted, and gives you some practical strategies about how you can work in a smarter, more efficient way. More importantly, what can happen is that it gives you the headspace, the energy, and just a little bit more of that breathing room to be able to lift your head up and think about, oh, what might I want to do instead? What's not working for me? What is working for me here? And what do I want more of? This is a great book to be able to understand and implement new ways of working that can give you that breathing room. On the same idea, if you are a woman who feels like you've noticed that at certain times of the month, you find it a lot harder to be productive or motivated compared to other times of the month, then the book that really changed the game for me on that, and that I recommend to so many women, is In the Flow by Alisa Vitti. This book is not necessarily career focused, it's more about cycle syncing, but she does also talk about how our fluctuations in our hormones affect things like our productivity and our focus and the kinds of work that we are better suited to at different times of the month. This helped explain a lot of things for me, and also just helped me to give myself some grace and some understanding based on how I feel at different times, and learn how to actually work with my rhythms rather than trying to force doing things in a very particular way every single day. And so these two books, in terms of ideas, kind of go together in the sense of figuring out what your best rhythms are and working in a way that is best suited to you. And if your immediate thought is, well, you know, I work in a big company, I don't have complete freedom over my time and my schedule, then both of these have really good suggestions of how you can implement some of these ideas, but in a corporate work setting. Okay, my next recommendation is for you if you feel like you don't have a good sense of what your true gifts are. So maybe you know the things that you're good at, you know what you say in your interviews when they ask you what your strengths are, or you just know in general, okay, these are the things that I've learned over time and that people tell me that I'm good at. But you don't necessarily feel like you know what your true strengths are, your true gifts. And those are the things that you are good at, but you also are really energized by. Those are your true gifts. And the tricky thing here is that so many of us can get caught up in what I like to call the trap of excellence. The reason why this can be a trap is because people validate you for them, because you are good at them, but also because people will continually ask you to do them because you're good at them. So you can get caught in a situation where you're continually doing things that you're good at, but actually are so draining for you and that you just really don't enjoy it and you just don't want to do it anymore of. But when you try to think about, okay, what are the things that light me up? What are the things that make me feel alive and that I feel like I'm really good at and I was, uniquely born to do? If you don't know what those things are, then this book can really help with that. Love and Work by Marcus Buckingham. This book will help you understand what true strengths are and can also help guide you into figuring out what those might be for you specifically, and also give you some insight into why you may have been hiding from your gifts this whole time, and just in general, what are the kinds of things that keep us away from our gifts or prevent us from being able to work in alignment with our gifts. This book helps me to really understand the difference between my excellence and my genius, and recognize what part of my work really fell into my genius, and therefore reorganize my working life around my true gifts. And I think it's a really helpful starting point for anybody who's hoping to do the same. Okay, this book is for those moments where you just feel completely lost. So maybe you have reached the point where you feel like, what I'm doing right now, I hate it. So you've got to that dissatisfied stage, something has to change. But when you're thinking about what that might be. You just feel like, I don't even know what my options are. Maybe you feel like, I've just been doing this thing for so long, I just don't even know where to start. This book is for you. Designing Your Life by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. What I really like about this book is that it helps you to think about your options, but in a really structured way. By guiding you through some really practical exercises, it forces you to think in options. The whole premise of the book is applying design thinking to your career. What I think is most powerful about this book is that it solves a problem that I see so often, which is when people are feeling lost and are trying to think about what it is that they want to do next, they are imagining that there is one perfect right answer. There is only one perfect next chapter, only one particular way that that next step can go. And that the path that they're on is just a linear path, and what they're trying to do is to just find that perfect next step. Whereas in reality, life is not like that. There are so many different ways that your path can go whenever you reach a choice point. And what this book forces you to do, in particular, one of the exercises in here called Odyssey Planning, forces you to think about multiple options and gives you constraints that force you to think about things in a new way. So for example, one of the things it asks you to think about is, what path would you take if the industry that you're in right now didn't exist? You sort of have to brainstorm 3 different ways that the next 5 years could go. I've done that exercise a few times, but I remember the last time I did this exercise was in 2020. And obviously pandemic had hit and so many people were getting laid off. It was still early days, so I wasn't sure how things were going to play out with my team at Facebook. So I decided that I was going to be proactive and I was going to think about what I might want to do instead, because I was so comfortable in my team. I loved my team. I loved my job so much. And I knew that if I got laid off, I had not been thinking about what else I might want to do. So I forced myself to sit down and do this exercise and think about, okay, what would my career look like if I continued in tech but at a different company, or if I started up my own business, or I can't remember what the third one was. And even though I didn't get laid off at that point, when I did leave about 3 years later, I already had a blueprint of ideas of directions that I had already been thinking about. And so I wasn't starting from scratch. And in actual fact, I had already started working towards one of those plans while I was still working full time. So 100%, I would not be on the path that I'm on right now if it wasn't for this book. So thanks, Bill and Dave. My next recommendation is for people who are further along in their journey. So you have already decided that you are ready to make a change. You have already got a clear sense of what your gifts are, and you have already got a clear sense of what your options are, and you've already picked something that it is that you want to do. And something that often comes up with people at this point is realizing that, oh, okay, I need to start building my personal brand in a new direction. I need to start sharing and talking to people about my gifts. And often it can feel so intimidating trying to do that from scratch again, especially if you are somebody who's built up a reputation or you've built up expertise in something completely different, your career that you're leaving behind. And I know I definitely felt this when I left Facebook. I left working in tech. I was now trying to build my reputation as a coach. Yeah, and I just found it really awkward. I found it really hard because people knew me in a particular way, and I was trying to reintroduce myself in a new way. And something people say to me often is just feeling like they need to be at a certain level of authority or certain level of expertise before they feel like they can begin to reintroduce themselves or start building their personal brand. And I know that I definitely felt that way. And the book that really helped was this book, Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. And this is a book that I dip in and out of all the time when I'm just feeling like I need that encouragement. And the whole premise of this book is that you need to show your work along the way, that you need to show people your messy process. You need to show people you're becoming, not just the end product or like the end goal. This is the whole idea behind building in public. I think this really helps with 2 things. One is that if you are somebody who is a perfectionist, it just helps give you that permission that it's okay for things to be messy and that it's okay for people to see the building phase, see the evolution. And also it reframes the whole idea, actually, it being less about you and being more focused on other people, which is that people can actually learn so much from your journey. You only have to be a couple of steps ahead to be able to have some learnings for some other people still on the journey. Whereas if you wait until you are already the expert and you're sharing, you've already outgrown so many lessons. People who are at the beginning have missed out from all the rich learnings that are available from that beginning of your journey. For example, I've now done so many coaching sessions that I can't really remember how nervous I was before my first one, and maybe be able to help a new coach who's just getting started having their first sessions, because that feels so far away to me now. Yeah, so it has lots of really good reminders to continually nudge you and encourage you to sharing your process along the way. So show your work along the way. This book is when you're in a phase of your career where you feel like you are ready to level up in terms of your leadership, or you have already already been asked to level up in terms of your leadership. You're in a moment of expansion, of evolving, of just embodying a new type of leader that you want to be. And this doesn't have to be a formal leadership position. This just could be you in your role. You want to expand your leadership, whatever that looks like to you. This is more about where you are on your path. You know what it is that you're doing. You know what you're going for. And it's just a question of expanding into that more authentically and more sustainably. Then this book is the one that I would recommend, which is all about conscious leadership. Somebody recommended this book to me when I first became a people leader at Meta. And this book became my Bible, my handbook for the rest of my time there. All of the 15 principles are things that I came back to time and time again. There are so many things in our subconscious that affect the way that we show up as a leader without even thinking about it, without being conscious of it. And so the principles mapped out in this book are a helpful way to guide you into that consciousness and awareness of what those different things could be in these different areas, and help you understand how you could do things differently and practice doing things differently. And so many of us in our career have experienced the impact of bad leadership, whether it's our own manager or, company leadership. And the challenge is that so often that behavior and where that behavior is coming from is unconscious to the leader in question. Sometimes it's on purpose, sometimes it's just completely unconscious. And I think if you are in a leadership position or want to be in a leadership position, or just in general thinking about how do I lead my life in a more conscious way, this book is a really helpful companion in that journey. My final book is a bit of a wild card, but as somebody who over my career has been extremely strategic, rational, and logic driven, I've really enjoyed over the past few years becoming a lot more open to the woo-woo of the world and understanding actually how you can look to more unconventional schools of thought as tools of inquiry in our own paths. And the way that I've enjoyed doing this is astrology and human design. And while I don't believe that astrology or human design or any of these things are prescriptive tools in terms of telling you exactly what you should be doing with your career or in your life in general, I have found that they can be really helpful mirrors for people to be able to have things to react to that they may have never considered at all before in their life. So kind of like inspiration. And I also find that so often it gives people permission to accept things that they already know about themselves to be true. So for example, I've had a couple of people who will say to me, you know what, I feel like I have this desire to be well known or to be famous or to be a performer in some way. And then we look at their astrology chart and it turns out that they have a very strong Leo placement. And where they might have been feeling guilty about it before, being able to see that reflected in their astrology makes them feel more open to being able to accept this part of themselves. So if that is something that you are curious about or already interested in, then a really helpful book for that is You Were Born for This by Chani Nicholas. I think a great thing about astrology is because it already gives you that blueprint of your self being made up of different parts, and therefore different parts of yourself may be wanting different things, which is a big theme that comes up in all of these career conversations. How can you begin to accept some of that and also structure your career around that? Or just make sure that there's room and acceptance for everything and expression of everything. So for example, one of the career themes that astrology really helped me to understand more about myself and accept more about myself is that I have an Aries moon. And I'm always somebody who has always taken action. If in doubt, I take action. And I kind of assumed until very recently that everybody was that way, that everybody was as hungry as I was to get things done and to move things forward. And where in the past I've sometimes felt frustrated about myself, learning more about how that shows up in my chart has actually made me realize that, you know what, this is just a part of who I am. And it gave me the permission to see that as a gift. And actually that is one of the core ways that I help other people, is by helping them to take action towards the things that they want to do in their career. So that is my roundup of books that I genuinely think about nearly every single week or recommend every single week to somebody. I hope that you found this helpful. Let me know in the comments, what are your favorite books? Which books have changed your career? Let's get some recommendations going and we can build a reading list together. All right, my loves, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.